When an opposing defensive coordinator stops being polite and starts sounding worried, you pay attention. That's exactly what happened when Robert Saleh stepped to the mic and talked about Shedeur Sanders. This wasn't the usual coach speak, the kind of respectful blurbs you hear before every game. Saleh didn't just compliment the rookie, he laid out a tactical alarm that made even hardened analysts sit up. He called Shedeur mobile, praised his arm, and kept circling one phrase like a red flag. His off-schedule playmaking is a real problem. Think about that for a second. Coordinators prepare game plans to exploit weaknesses and mask strengths. They build pressure packages and disguise coverages specifically to force quarterbacks into mistakes. When a coordinator publicly admits an opposing QB can create outside of structure, that he can extend plays, escape the pocket, and still hit throws on the move, that's not a casual compliment. That's a warning shot. Saleh went further. He talked about command at the line, week-to-week growth, and the danger of a confident rookie who only looks sharper with reps. Those words carry weight because Saleh has seen elite arms and dynamic runners. If he's projecting improvement for Shedeur, it's because the tape backed it up. This moment matters. It switches the narrative from rookie debut to legitimate threat. The 49ers know what they're facing. Cleveland fans should feel excited. NFL defenses should be planning for a new kind of headache. The moment Robert Saleh started talking, you could hear something different in his tone. There was no fake enthusiasm, no forced compliments, no defensive posturing. Instead, he spoke with the kind of measured honesty that only comes from a coach who has watched the film and didn't love what he saw, at least not from the perspective of facing it. When he called Shedeur Sanders a good young quarterback with mobility, arm strength, and tremendous confidence, the wording might have sounded simple, but the emphasis? That was telling. Confidence isn't something defensive coordinators praise lightly. It's one of the hardest traits to prepare against because film study can't erase it and pressure doesn't always break it. Saleh expanded on that point by bringing up specific plays from Shedeur's debut, the moments where the structure of the offense broke down and Shedeur simply created. Extending plays, moving outside the pocket, throwing accurately on the run. These traits are nightmares for defensive coordinators because they turn perfect coverage into improvised disaster. Saleh didn't just acknowledge it, he highlighted it. That's not typical pregame fluff. That's a coach planting a flag and saying, "This kid can hurt us." But what truly raised eyebrows was his projection forward. Saleh didn't talk about Shedeur as a one-game spark or someone riding adrenaline. He talked about him as a player who will get better and better every week. Someone whose skill set will only sharpen with experience. That is unheard of language for a rookie with one start. It's essentially an early scouting report disguised as praise. And then came the punchline, the line that hit the league like a jolt. His off-schedule stuff is going to be a problem. Could already tell that. Defensive coordinators don't admit problems publicly unless the threat is real. That sentence alone told every franchise exactly what Cleveland might have discovered. A quarterback who can break structure, punish mistakes, and flip momentum in seconds. Saleh wasn't hyping, he was warning. And in a league where perception shifts quickly, that warning may have just changed the way defenses prepare for Shedeur Sanders from this week onward. If there's one phrase that makes every defensive coordinator in the NFL tense up, it's off-schedule playmaking. That's the part of quarterbacking you can't script, can't fully prepare for, and definitely can't control once it starts happening. When Robert Saleh said Shedeur Sanders' off-schedule playmaking, off-schedule ability is going to be a problem, that wasn't casual commentary. That was a genuine red flag from a coach who's built his entire career on discipline, structure, and controlling chaos. Here's why it matters so much. NFL defenses spend the entire week building a plan around timing. Play A should take 2.1 seconds. Play B should take 2.7. Routes develop at precise depths. Pressure arrives at predictable moments. And coverages are designed based on where the quarterback should be standing when he tries to throw. That structure collapses the moment a quarterback refuses to play the game on schedule. And that's where Shedeur becomes dangerous. When the pocket bends, most rookies panic. Their feet get messy, their eyes drop, and the throw either dies in the dirt or becomes a gift-wrapped interception. But Shedeur, he thrives in that moment. Against the Raiders, he didn't just escape pressure, he escaped with purpose. He kept his eyes downfield, reset his feet on the move, and fired strikes that looked like plays ripped straight out of highlight reels. For defensive coordinators, that's the nightmare scenario. You can call the perfect blitz, win the matchup, collapse the pocket, and still give up a 35-yard play because the quarterback refused to die with the original design. Players like Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, and Lamar have made entire defenses crumble with that exact style. It turns mistakes into touchdowns and broken plays into momentum-shifting explosions. Saleh knows this. That's why he wasn't smiling when he said it. He's preparing for a quarterback who won't follow the script, who won't stay where he's supposed to be, and who won't collapse when the first read isn't there. Off-schedule playmaking is the great equalizer. And if Shedeur already has that trait this early, the league is going to have a real problem on its hands. The thing about NFL coaches, especially defensive minds like Robert Saleh, is that they rarely say exactly what they mean. There's always a layer beneath the words, a subtle message only people who understand the sport can catch. And when Saleh talked about Shedeur Sanders, the subtext was impossible to ignore. He wasn't just respecting the rookie. He was wary of him, cautious, even a little unsettled by what he saw on film. Listen closely to the tone he used. It wasn't the tone reserved for rookies who flash early and fade later. It wasn't the polite praise that coaches offer before dismantling someone on Sunday. Instead, it was steady, measured, almost like someone acknowledging a legitimate threat before everyone else realizes it. Saleh didn't speak about Shedeur like a curiosity. He spoke about him like an emerging problem the league needs to start paying attention to. And that's what makes this so interesting. When he referenced Shedeur's command in the huddle and at the line of scrimmage, he wasn't just complimenting execution. He was shutting down the biggest criticism that followed Shedeur from college to the NFL. The idea that he couldn't handle NFL complexity. Saleh essentially said, nope, that narrative is dead. He gets it. That alone shifts league perception, because when an opposing coach confirms a quarterback's mental sharpness publicly, it means the film made it undeniable. Then came the revealing line. As he gets comfortable in what they're asking him to do, he's only going to get better. That's not hype. That's projection. Saleh is forecasting growth, the kind that turns talented rookies into long-term nightmares for defenses. He's acknowledging that Cleveland is tailoring the offense to Shedeur's strengths, and once the rookie fully settles in, he'll be even harder to stop. Coaches don't speak that way about quarterbacks they expect to regress. They speak that way about quarterbacks who can evolve, adapt, and eventually take over games on their own terms. The ones who rise fast. So when Saleh gave this warning, it wasn't about this week's matchup alone. It was about what Shedeur Sanders could become, and the quiet, uncomfortable realization that the league might be witnessing the birth of another true franchise quarterback. Jerry Jeudy's comments this week weren't explosive, dramatic, or headline-grabbing on the surface, but the undertone was impossible to ignore. You could hear it in the pauses, the short answers, the way he brushed off the constant quarterback carousel he's lived through. Jeudy didn't sound angry. He sounded tired, worn down by years of inconsistency. A receiver's career can be reshaped, even derailed, by instability under center, and Jeudy has lived that reality more than most. So when he said, "I just keep being me, ain't nothing I can control but myself," that wasn't just a shrug. That was a veteran subtly admitting that constant change has taken a toll. And who could blame him? Different quarterbacks mean different timing, different ball placement, different trust levels. It's like trying to run a marathon when the track keeps changing shape beneath your feet. But here's where the deeper truth reveals itself. Jeudy's frustration indirectly highlights something important about Shedeur Sanders. Even in a room tired of change, Shedeur brings stability. When Jeudy talked about simply running his routes and doing his job, he wasn't dismissing the quarterback, he was bracing himself for yet another transition. But Shedeur isn't just another QB. He's the first one in a while who makes the receivers believe the turbulence might finally end. Players won't say that outright. They'll hint at it. Their tone changes, their urgency shifts, and you can already sense it happening. The fumble in Shedeur's debut wasn't just a mistake. It was a reminder that receivers share responsibility in shaping a quarterback's narrative. Jeudy knows that, and deep down, he knows that if he locks in mentally and cleans up the details, this offense can explode with Shedeur at the controls. There's another angle too. Jeudy's comments about having life outside football. It sounded casual, but it showed a contrast. While he's seeking balance, Shedeur is locked into what he called grind mode. That difference in mindset is exactly why the Browns' offense may shift around Shedeur's intensity rather than Jeudy's tempo. Jeudy's honesty wasn't a warning sign, it was a mirror. It showed the emotional fatigue of a veteran and the quiet recognition that things might finally be changing. The matchup with the San Francisco 49ers isn't just another game on the schedule. It's the kind of test that can shift narratives, reshape careers, and force the entire league to reevaluate what they think they know about a young quarterback. For Shedeur Sanders, this isn't simply a chance to stack another start. It's a moment to prove that what he showed against the Raiders wasn't a spark, but the start of something much bigger. And the stakes couldn't be higher. The 49ers aren't a middling defense that survives on effort and hustle. They're a fully engineered unit, explosive, disciplined, aggressively strategic. They disguise pre-snap looks better than almost any team in football, and they attack weaknesses with surgical accuracy. Saleh knows exactly what Shedeur does well, and he's going to spend the entire week crafting traps designed to confuse and overwhelm him. This isn't a defense that waits for mistakes, it creates them. But here's the twist. This is exactly the kind of environment where Shedeur thrives. Against Vegas, we saw flashes of something you can't coach. Poise under fire. Clean pockets are a luxury in the NFL. Chaos is the default. And Shedeur's ability to stay calm when the structure dissolves is what terrifies coaches like Saleh. Because once a quarterback stops panicking in those moments, once he starts seeing the field even while he's escaping pressure, defenses lose a huge chunk of their advantage. The real question is how Shedeur will handle the mental warfare. San Francisco's defense will show a look pre-snap, rotate post-snap, and expect a young QB to misread the coverage. If Shedeur stays patient, trusts his keys, and doesn't force throws, he'll keep the Browns in this game. But if he starts guessing, that's when mistakes happen. Still, there's a confidence surrounding Shedeur that's impossible to ignore. The preparation, the composure, the way his teammates respond to him, it all points to someone ready for a stage like this. And even if the stat line isn't perfect, performing well against a defense of this caliber would send a message to every skeptic still clinging to old narratives. This isn't just a test. It's a crossroads, one that could mark the moment the league realizes Shedeur Sanders isn't just adjusting to the NFL, he's already arriving. For the Cleveland Browns, this game isn't merely a week-to-week battle. It's a glimpse into what the next decade could look like. Every franchise searches endlessly for stability at quarterback. Some teams get lucky and find it early. Others, like the Browns, spend years cycling through names, faces, and failed experiments that leave the fan base exhausted and the organization scrambling for answers. That's why this moment feels different. Because for the first time in a long time, Cleveland isn't just hoping for a solution, they might actually be watching one take shape in real time. If Shedeur Sanders performs well against a defense as strong and strategic as San Francisco's, it validates everything the Browns have been building behind the scenes. It confirms that the flashes weren't accidental, that the traits weren't exaggerated, and that the leadership wasn't overstated. It proves that Cleveland can move forward with confidence, not week to week, but year to year, knowing the most important position on the field is finally stabilizing, and stability changes everything. Suddenly, receivers start buying in, running backs run harder, the offensive line gains confidence. A defense that's been carrying the load for years finally feels like it has offensive support. The locker room energy shifts because players know they're not just fighting to survive, they're fighting to contend. You can already sense hints of that with the way teammates talk about Shedeur, the way the offense moves with him under center, and the way he prepares. This isn't a quarterback trying to fit in. This is a quarterback trying to elevate the entire building. From a front office perspective, this gain helps shape the offseason strategy. If Shedeur shows he can compete with elite defenses now, imagine what Cleveland can build around him with more time, more weapons, and more familiarity with the system. Draft decisions change. Free agency targets shift. Coaches start conceptualizing schemes built around his strengths, rather than contingency plans for inconsistency. For the fans, the long-suffering, loyal, relentlessly passionate Browns fans, this game represents something even more emotional. Real hope. Not hype. Not preseason optimism. Not another maybe. Actual, tangible belief that the team may have finally found its quarterback of the future. If Shedeur shows up against the 49ers, he won't just be proving something to the league. He'll be rewriting the future of a franchise that's waited far too long for a moment like this. When you step back and look at everything surrounding this matchup, the pressure, the storylines, the commentary from coaches who usually keep their cards close, it's clear this game is bigger than a typical early season showdown. It represents a turning point, not just for Shedeur Sanders, but for a franchise and fan base that have spent decades searching for exactly this kind of spark. The energy feels different. The conversations sound different. And for the first time in years, the Browns aren't entering a big game with dread. They're entering it with curiosity, excitement, and a genuine sense of promise. Robert Saleh's comments weren't just pre-game chatter. They were a quiet admission that Cleveland might have found something real. A quarterback who doesn't shrink from pressure, who doesn't get rattled when the play breaks down, and who doesn't crumble when the moment grows heavy. Those traits separate long-term starters from short-term stories. They separate headline makers from franchise cornerstones. And they're exactly the traits coaches recognize instantly, even if the rest of the world is a few steps behind. What Shedeur does against the 49ers isn't about perfection. It's about presence, composure, adaptability. If he shows he can stand toe-to-toe with one of the league's most disciplined defenses, even in a loss, it validates his trajectory and accelerates Cleveland's confidence in building around him. It tells the locker room that the guy under center isn't just talented, he's legitimate. It tells the front office that the long-term plan finally has a foundation. And most importantly, it tells the fans that the suffering, the false hopes, the years of cycling through quarterbacks might finally be ending. This isn't the kind of opportunity every rookie gets. It's the kind that can define a career early and reshape a franchise's future. If Shedeur plays with the same calm, the same grit,